What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, part of the All-City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by the man who takes less time off than Josh Hart. It's Tim Legler. Legs, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling like Josh Hart probably, or maybe more like OG Anunoby right now. I don't know. I think I might have pulled something today. I don't know.
That's right.
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Very interesting series so far, what's taking place between the Knicks and the Pacers, so I can't wait to dive into it.
Very interesting. Does not feel like it should be 2-0. It almost feels like, given how these two games went in game one and game two, it should be 1-1. But alas, the Knicks keep winning these tough, gritty, ugly games, ball bouncing their way perhaps a little bit. We're going to talk about all of that. Also, we didn't get a chance to talk about Thunder-Mavs. Game one, very impressive from Oklahoma City. I can't wait to talk about that series as well. And a very interesting game plan on Luka Doncic. We'll get into all of that and more. Plus, Jokic wins MVP. Shaq steals the show. We'll talk about that. But first, All-NBA sponsored by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Legs, let's go back to the Garden for game two. Wild swings in this one. Pacers, really good back and forth first quarter. Pacers build a nice lead in the second when Jalen Brunson leaves. But on the anniversary of Willis Reed coming out of the tunnel and inspiring his team, the exact date, Jalen Brunson comes back in the second half and ignites a run for the Knicks to come back in it. OG Anunoby got hurt, though, comes up, pulls a hamstring. He was phenomenal in this game. And then Josh Hart, once again, for the second time in a row, and I believe the fourth time in this playoffs, plays all 48 minutes. And the Knicks offensive rebound their way to a second win in this series, 130-121. All right, what stood out to you the most in this one?
I mean, my goodness, there's so many different subplots to the whole thing. I think the first thing at the top of the list today that stood out to me was Rick Carlisle continuing to make decisions with regard to his rotation and with regard to who's guarding Jalen Brunson. That if he sticks to it, and if this is some sort of, I don't know, like a pride thing, is this an ego thing with Rick Carlisle? I'm going to just keep beating the same drum. You can't put Nembhard on Jalen Brunson for as many minutes as you are and play him straight up as many times as you have. Now, he adjusted a couple of things in this game, and I don't love running blitzes out at guys when they cross half court. This isn't because it's not a weak high school team. The guys that the ball's coming, when you play a high school team, right? And they got one star player and you want to run at him and get it out of his hands at all costs because the other guys can't play. When you run out that far on the court, and you're giving Jalen Brunson all of the vision and available passes to him as these guys are running out there without a screener being involved. When he got rid of it, there's almost no way you're going to be able to cover Hartenstein diving down the middle to the rim and get out to the corner 3-point shooter. So they did that a few times. Wasn't very successful. To me, the two guys that will have better success on him, and it's proven, is Nesmith and McConnell. And TJ McConnell has been sensational. This might be the best I've ever seen TJ McConnell play in the last two games. There's no answer for him. They can't keep him out of the paint. He's making every mid-range shot that he gets inside of 15 feet. He had 9 assists or something in the first half of the game by pushing pace. And you get to the 7-minute mark in the game, and you decide you're going to go back to Nembhard, and obviously you're going back to Halliburton at that point. But you take TJ McConnell out of the game, Obi Toppin comes out of the game. Those guys don't see the floor at the end of the game. Two guys that were having a lot of success for you. And Rick Carlisle decides to go in a different direction. He continues to be married to this Nembhard on Brunson matchup. And as long as he does that, and Jalen Brunson would have had 40 in this game if he didn't miss an entire quarter, he's going to get 40 every game. In this series, he's going to get 35 to 45 every single game if you continue to put Nembhard on him as much as you're putting it. And look, This is me saying it. A lot of people are saying it. I know they're getting beat up in Indiana, like their sports talk radio and their media, like everybody's questioning the same thing, particularly as it relates. If he makes an adjustment or he's just so dug in, nope, this is the right way, and we're going to do it this way because whatever analytics they have said something to them to indicate this might be the best matchup. It hasn't proven to be. At one point, he was 9 for 11 against him in his last 11 shots. That's not a coincidence. He's not big enough. McConnell is certainly not big enough either. McConnell's a lot quicker, and McConnell makes him eat up a little bit of energy coming up the floor and the different things that he does, right? He fights over screens better. He denies the ball better. Nembhard doesn't do those things as well. And at the end of the day, when Jalen Brunson goes up to shoot the ball, Nembhard usually has both feet on the ground, and he kind of puts a half token hand up. And Jalen Brunson, for a great player in rhythm, those are easy shots. I don't care what distance they are. So to me, that's what stood out more than anything. That lack of adjustment. I don't know how much they have to watch Jalen Brunson destroy them like this before they decide that we're gonna have to mix this up. And they tried a little bit with those traps, but I thought those were ineffective when you trap a guy that far out on the floor without a screen being set.
So who is the guy that you think, is this a matter of Nembhard, maybe his minutes need to be reduced? He's already playing the least of all the starters, but is this one where you feel like he can kind of be thrown to a more of a bench role and you play McConnell more minutes? Is it Ben Shepherd? Like who is it that you're looking at?
I mean, that's where I'm at. I think McConnell should get more minutes than him right now. And this was pretty close, 27-23. And look, Nembhard is important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to trash Nembhard at all. He was 7 for 9 in this game. And you need his offense. McConnell's not really a 3-point shooter. Nembhard can make threes. His range is a little bit better. He's a good offensive player, and he's a good defender. Don't get me wrong. Against a lot of guys, he'd be fine. This is a matchup which Jalen Brunson, because of the way he controls the ball and with his strength and balance, he's getting Nembhard to back up by hitting him with his shoulder and giving him some herky-jerky stuff and changing directions, and Nembhard's backing up. And then when the point of release comes, he's just not big enough to bother that shot. I think Nesmith would be a better option for more minutes. I think they're worried he's going to get in foul trouble because he's a little bit overly aggressive in that way. And maybe that's the case, but maybe that's a chance you have to take. So McConnell to get 23, Nembhard 27, maybe that should be not just flipped, but maybe even more significantly in McConnell's favor. He's been too sensational in the first 2 games of this series to convince me that he shouldn't get more than 23 minutes. He should be on the court more than that. Things are really happening for that team when TJ McConnell's been on the floor. Knicks don't seem to have a real answer for that at all. I would continue to milk that. Now, look, this series is going to take a turn potentially, depending what happens with Anunoby.
Right.
That's a big one. I mean, that is a big one. We're going to get there in a minute. But regardless, this is more just Pacers focused. What are you going to do differently? Because like I said, Brunson, what do you have, 30? He had 29 points.
29.
But he missed free throws to keep him at 29, or he would have been over 30. And he missed, 15
a whole
minutes
quarter
of playing time
more than
wasn't
that.
available to him. 15 minutes. So, come on, do the math. The way this guy's playing, he would have had certainly 35, maybe 40 again. And it's like, so you're literally talking about, it's not just one guy beating them. I'm not going to go that extreme because you're getting great contributions from other guys. Josh Hart, DiVincenzo have been sensational. Anunoby was great last night. Hartenstein's been great. Yeah, you're getting it from other people, but come on, let's talk about what this issue is. You're letting one guy go off on you every night. So you've got to make a determination, and it's not going to change. He's too efficient. He's getting to his spots. He's in a great rhythm. He's got great confidence. You're going to have to mix it up. And that's to me is the big challenge for Rick Carlisle. I'm dying to see what he does in game 3.
I was impressed with the Knicks. We go to their side now. I was impressed with how many guys were able to make connecting passes in this game. And you mentioned those traps. Hartenstein, 8 assists. He's such a good passer. I actually think the Knicks all season have underutilized that skill in him. Like, he has the ability to be 5 or 6 assist a game kind of guy. But, their style, they play a different style. He's more of a defensive type of option there for them. But in this game, the ball, he had a lot of decisions to make. I thought Josh Hart had a lot of decisions to make. DiVincenzo. There was a lot of guys, even Precious Achiuwa, who had to make the connecting passes. And I was so impressed with how dialed in the Knicks were on those, because especially on a team that doesn't always get to that, like doesn't always have all those guys being at a fulcrum piece on the release valve, for all of them to make the decisions they made 28 assists, just 9 turnovers. 5 of those came from Hart. That to me is one of the things that stood out. That's the sign to me of a next level team. I know everybody's looking at this saying, how talented are the Knicks? Are they actually good this? And they're dropping like flies. I look at it and I go, they have a bunch of guys that can play the system that they've designed for themselves. And that it doesn't matter how good you are. Do you fit the goal that your team has? And last night was one of the best examples I thought of that from the Knicks.
I agree with that, man. Look, they scored 130 points, and that's just, that's not a team that I would think of as like a high-powered team. They just seem like they're making every right play, and they're making every single shot that has to be made right now. And that's been what's blown me away, particularly like DiVincenzo. The year he's had offensively, and he continues it here in the postseason, is so far above what we thought he was in terms of a career scorer and what he was going to be, like what his ceiling was. We thought we'd seen it. Very few guys are in the league the number of years that DiVincenzo was, and then all of a sudden they have this happen to them. It's really been incredible. Like and give Thibodeau all the credit in the world, because I think it's just the comfort level you have with a coach having confidence in you. It's amazing how that unleashes any sort of doubt and uncertainty in your mind. So you're getting these huge shots made. Hart, DiVincenzo, Anunoby, Hartenstein, whoever has to make one in the moment. Obviously Brunson, they're making the shot. Indiana has had, here's where it gets a little scary for the Pacers. They've had 2 games played at exactly the pace that they want if it's scripted. You script this series, that's what it looks like. Both games. And they lost both. And they lost the second one, not having to deal with Brunson for 15 minutes, not having to deal with Anunoby, who was torching them basically the last, second half of the game, last quarter and a half. So you're getting these incredible breaks. And the Pacers played your way. The first game, you did a great job on the defensive glass. Offensive rebounding became more of a factor last night. But for the most part, man, quarter, it's like, you're following the script. Like, this is what we needed to have happen, and you're down 2. So that's concerning. I guess if you look at the glass half full from Indiana's standpoint, you say, okay, we're gonna have to get some breaks here and close the deal when we get home, but we're right there. We know that this style's working against them. We're going to be in the game. We're able to dictate pace, which is what we need to do. Now let's just make the stops when we have to, and more importantly, let's make some shots when we have to match them, and we'll pull out a couple close games at home and get this thing to a best-of-3 series. That's probably where their mindset is. Like, hey, we're in good shape here. All we did was lose 2 road games, and we were right there in both. We're in a good place headed home.
The Knicks, I'm kind of surprised they only had 12 offensive rebounds. 5 of those came in the fourth quarter. But that seems to be their MO. Like, on top of how hard they play and everything else they do, in the clutch, they just have this knack for really putting pressure on. And I wonder how much of it is, Legs, in the fourth quarter, even a team like the Pacers are less inclined to try to run. The game slows down. It becomes a possession battle. So I wonder if they just say everybody, they were like kamikazes last night running at the rim, just throwing their bodies in the vicinity of the offensive rebound and coming up with it. And I just kept thinking, Indiana's playing good defense in the clutch, but they keep giving up these offensive rebounds and second chance opportunities, and that's what broke their back. But that's the Knicks' calling card. If there's one thing, Jalen Brunson would be the one thing. But if there's a second thing you're saying about the Knicks so far in the postseason, it's been they have broken the teams' backs with offensive rebounds.
Yeah, it's so demoralizing. It's so demoralizing because, especially when, Brunson rolling the way he is and you force a possession in which he misses a shot or somebody misses a shot, and then they get another opportunity and they score at the end of that. There's nothing more demoralizing. And you're right. That's a good way to describe them. Kamikazes, man. They're coming in waves. They're coming. Everybody's coming. The Wings come more than any team I've seen send their guys to the glass. Like it's crazy because you don't see guards the size of Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo going to the glass like this. You just don't see that. And the pressure you're putting on Indiana's wings to put a body on them when their inclination in the regular season is to sort of like take one eye at your guy when the shot goes up. Okay, they're not going in. Now I can start leaking up the floor to get our transition going. You can't do that against this team. You just can't. It's been a big factor in the game. Another thing has been a big factor in the game, Adam, we can't deny. The officiating is a big factor from this standpoint.
Let's get to it.
I didn't feel like watching the game in the moment Indiana was getting the short end of the stick last night on calls. I didn't feel that way. Here's, though, the can of worms that the league has opened up.
Here we go. This is good.
By calling that illegal screen at the end of game one, by calling that, and then in the 2-minute report saying, no, they got that call right. That call's right. What you've opened, so we did the numbers on this. There was 142 screens set in game one. There were 2 illegal screens called. 2 in the entire game. If you're telling me that that's the right call, there were plays last night. TJ McConnell's picking up the ball in full court in the backcourt, and he's getting drilled by screens that were moving in the backcourt to get him off of Brunson. And just like nobody seems to be paying attention to that. So the problem is when you're gonna open up this can of worms and say, no, that's an illegal screen, did not give the guy time to turn. Why aren't they all called then? Just explain it to me, because I think that's Rick Carlisle's main frustration. That call last night they made on Hartenstein when Rick Carlisle got the technical and they called the double dribble, and then it turned out it wasn't. It turns out it was not a double dribble. You watch the replay, his other hand never hit the ball. So you don't have much of a beef if you're Rick Carlisle. Okay, they called it, they made a mistake, but they got it right. And at the end of the day, it's about getting it right. This subjective stuff with the screens and the hand checks and what they're calling and sometimes and not calling others. And then you look at the 2-minute report and they're saying, this is a correct no call. This is a correct call. You go, okay, well then in the next game, I expect that to be addressed. And then it's not. That's where Rick Carlisle has a serious problem. And I don't blame him for that. The inconsistency, particularly with hands on the perimeter and screening. Those are the 2 issues that are wildly inconsistent. And that is, I think, where Rick Carlisle has the biggest problem. And I think he's got justification for being upset.
I've got 2 other areas here that I think are interesting. One, that game was very physical. Game 2, Knicks-Pacers. And game 2 of Denver-Minnesota was extremely physical. Again, not lopsided. It was just physical both ways. Both of those games were officiated. The officiating crew chief was Mark Davis. So to me, sometimes we all know this. Every referee kind of calls games differently. They have their own rhythm. For whatever reason, both of those games were just allowed to be played extremely physical both ways. And I think the team more comfortable in both instances with that ended up winning and getting an edge out of that. Yeah. And again, doesn't mean it's unfair. It just means that every game takes its own texture. But here's the part that I think is most interesting, Legs. There have been 3 seasons of officiating in the NBA this year. The start of the year, where everybody was scoring 70 points and the games were 160 to 150. Then there was this change that came sometime in like February where the game got a lot more physical, nothing announced. And then you have the playoffs, which are almost another level of that. If you compared an average NBA game from November to what we've seen this week, you would say, like, how are these even the same sport? That's how different it is. So for me, I look at this, and again, I don't think it gives anyone an advantage. It's fair to every team that's playing. But I do think one of the storylines of this playoffs has been, it's been incredibly physical, probably the most physical playoffs I can remember in the last 10 years. Yep. And some teams are thriving under that, and some teams are wilting under it. The Pacers and Carlisle doing what he did yesterday kind of shows me that his team he's trying to work the officials, but also that his team he doesn't believe they can handle that physicality. That's at least what it seems to me.
Yeah, it's just one of those deals, Adam. It works against them if that's how it's going to be. And look, we know for a long time that the officiating changes in the postseason. That's going on forever. I mean, that's certainly the case when I played, but the difference wasn't as extreme. When I played, it was a very physical night-to-night basis in the 90s. Every night was a physical,
right?
And then it just got dialed up in the postseason. And
right.
Teams that had strong, physical, aggressive athletes that were good defensive teams, like the Knicks of the 90s, the Bulls of the 90s, like the Pacers of the 90s, like those teams had an advantage then because it was really hard to handle the ball and to get clean shots off at the rim because all that stuff kind of was literally like forgotten about. This is so extreme from what we saw in the regular season to now. A team like the Knicks does have the advantage because in general, they're more aggressive anyway in the regular season. So you're not asking them to adjust that much. Instead, all you're asking the Knicks to do is say, eyes get wide open like, okay, wow, they didn't call that? All right, here we go. That's really dialed up now. And for a team like the Pacers that aren't as physical defensively in a regular season, to adjust to that, where they can basically, do a lot more physically defensively, it's not fair to ask that team to be able to adjust to it in that way. And so it's a disadvantage. I am not blaming the officials for what's happened here. Last night, You gave up 57% shooting in a playoff game, okay, that you had to have. You scored 100 and whatever it was. I changed my screen here. What was the final score of the game last night? 130, 118?
Man,
You
I just
scored
changed mine as
118
well.
points. You scored
130.
118 points, Adam. That's got to be more than enough to win a playoff game. 118 points. It has to. Instead, you're not even close. You needed to get to 131. So I'm blaming this mostly on their inability defensively to come up with something that's dealing with Brunson while also getting to the 3-point shooting and getting to these other guys. It's not an easy thing to do because of how great a player Brunson is. That is the challenge before the Indiana Pacers. It's not the officiating. It's how do we come up, because they're going to be fine offensively. I'm convinced they're going to be fine the whole series. If they have been 2 games in New York, they're going to be fine, especially if Anunoby's limited. You're going to be just fine. You're going to get the shots you want. You're going to score points. Can you stop the Knicks? That's what it comes down to, period. So what are you coming up with for game 3 that's going to be different than what we saw last night? That is the challenge for Rick Carlisle and this coaching staff.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we got to get to this other series, the Thunder and the Mavs. That was a very interesting one as well with an adjustment from the Thunder. The Thunder, known for making tons of adjustments, have had their finger on the pulse so far this playoffs, and they made one against the Mavs that I want to talk to Legs about. Plus, Jokic wins his 3rd MVP, and Shaq had something to say about it. More on the other side. But first, get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all your outdoor activities. They have hundreds of options to choose from. They literally do. It's actually a very well laid out website, tons of options. Styles and obviously different frame colors, lens colors, and all that different stuff. It's very easy to kind of navigate and get the type of glasses that fit your style. And like I said, right now with summertime, I've got a pair of Shady Rays that sit in my car in the glove compartment. So I just wear them. They're like my driving glasses. I have one that's right as I walk out the door, just for like going out, going for a walk or whatever glasses. And I have one in my backpack, so I have them on the go. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Also want to tell you about DraftKings Pick 6. This show is brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code ALLNBA. Do you ever play that game of over-under with your friends? Or maybe with your spouse, over or under 30 minutes before your wife gets ready to go out for an evening? Or how many times will your boss call you big dog at work? If Emma was playing that game, I would set the line at 7.5. Big dog. Right now, you can play DraftKings Pick 6. That's basically the game. You have to pick an over or under. Here's how to play during the NBA playoffs. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Rebounds, points, assists, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. It's really cool. It's especially fun on nights where there are multiple games going on. You got two games on the same night. That's 2 or 4 rosters to pick from to go over under. So download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code ALLNBA for a shot at huge cash prizes. That's code ALLNBA, ALLNBA, only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 and over in most eligible states. Age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pick 6 not available in all states, including but not limited to Connecticut and New York. For up-to-date list of states, visit dkng.co/pick6states. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, let's rewind now and talk about the Dallas Mavericks and the OKC Thunder. I told you, Legs, round 1, unimpressed with the Thunder because I thought the Pelicans were just not a very good team and they were missing their star. So everything starts now in round 2. What an impressive win in round 2 to open that up. 117-95, completely shut down Dallas's offensive attack. And how did they do it? Daring 2 guys in particular, Derek Jones Jr., Josh Green, really daring them to take open shots. They packed the paint. And they forced Dallas to play repetitive, just keep kicking it out to the open guy. They wouldn't even run out on some of these kickouts to those guys. And I thought Dallas did not do a good job of overcoming that defense. Green gets 8 3-point attempts. Derek Jones only took 3 because he was reluctant, but he was open nonstop. That's what stood out to me. But what stood out to you about that matchup?
Yeah, and I agree that was a strategy. I actually thought Josh Green played okay. He was 3 for 8. I mean, that's not a terrible night. I mean, I know
Nope.
if the majority of those are really clean looks, you're certainly, if you got a real shooter in that situation, like a drop dead shooter, you're going to make 5 or 6 out of 8 probably. And that's the risk that they're willing to take. But 3 out of 8 is not a terrible night from the 3-point line. Derek Jones was only 1 for 3. It's not really his game. I agree with that. Packing the paint. And the way that they're going to play defensively against Luka and Kyrie, that's going to continue. And it was effective in the first game. But a big reason it's effective. And I don't want to, there's always two sides to every one of these games, Adam. It's one thing to say, man, super impressed with Oklahoma City. No doubt about it, because it's clean and sharp and crisp. And they made every decent looking three they had to make in the second half to extend that lead. I just thought that they looked closer like to their peak level of what we watched all year. So give them credit for that. But on the other side, I'm going to be I think, boil this down as simply as I can. This series comes down to one thing for me. Can Luka Doncic make a perimeter shot?
I know.
It's that the guy's missed 58 threes since the playoffs started. 58. He just has, look, he's not going to make us choose for the knee. We can do it for him. He's not right. You could see, he fell. He was a weird play. He tripped over Dort's foot running by him, and then he was just different after that. But as it got on, the game went on, he got less aggressive. It got worse. He's got less lift. Ball's hitting front rim on a step back three. The thing is, I don't believe that Dort's bothering him on those shots.
You don't?
He's too... right? Because I don't think so. Not on the shots, I'm saying.
Oh, on the shots, got you. Okay.
Is he bothering him as a pressure ball, when he's handling the ball, as a pressure defender? Yeah, of course. He's strong. He's physical. Even on some of the back down stuff, Dort is strong. He's got a low center of gravity. Yes, he's a very good defender in those situations. I'm talking about, go back and look at all the jumpers he's missing and look at the point of release. There's space. He's not hand on hand on these shots. He's shooting a lean back shot where Dort's hand is not really affecting him. What's affecting him is the lack of lift. And when you don't have lift, the timing on your release isn't good. The ball's a little bit flat and you're not making shots. There's too many empty trips for such a big weapon for Luka Doncic. And if he can't find enough in that leg, enough juice in his knee to look better physically, very similar to the way he did in Game 5 of the Clippers series, when that was by far the best he looked physically in that series. And as a result, he was over 50% from the field. He still was 2 for 8 from the 3, but he made 2 in the second half when you would think, his knee would feel worse. He looked great physically. He dominated that game. He got them to 3-2, put them in a position to close out. He was nowhere close to that in Game 1. And it's not a good sign. I didn't like his body language when he came out. He's taking the tape off. He's staring at his knee. All of it. I mean, I think he's listed as probable.
You know what, though, Legs? Hold on a second. Hold on. I'll say this because I've said this about Joel Embiid, and I'm going to say it about Luka. The knee seems to hurt more when he misses shots than when he makes them. And my whole thing is, it's playoff times. Everybody's banged up. He's clearly not 100%. I'm not trying to say he's not. But it does seem like when he misses 4 in a row, the knee hurts a little bit worse. And to me, I'm like, if you're out there, you got to be out there. You got to play and you got to go. So I don't like that excuse for him, even though it obviously is bothering him. If you're going to play, the team needs you to make that shot.
No, you're talking to the wrong guy. I'm watching the game differently. I'm watching Luka Doncic the first 3 minutes of the game, the way he's moving. He was moving at a snail's pace. Everything he did was slow. Everything was slow. Sure. Right off the bat, right away. I said he just doesn't look right physically. So when you go look at the pace he played with in Game 5 of that Clipper series, everything was up the floor quick. It was quick, decisive movements, quick attacks. Everything he did had a purpose. He was giving the ball up so early last night, early in the game, crossing half court and just throwing it to the other side of the floor and just, you guys go. That's not who Luka Doncic is, man. So to your point, I think if you're trying to intimate that, the way he is acting when he misses a few shots, he starts exaggerating the limp a little bit. Is that what you mean? He is trying to draw more attention to the fact that he doesn't feel right when he's missing shots.
This is my only point. You're out there. It's the same with Jamal Murray. He's clearly banged up, but you're out there. And if you're missing these shots, okay, we get it. Your knee is sore here, but they need you to make that shot. And there's nothing else really matters here. You got to make the shot or you can't.
No,
listen. And that's all I'm saying
agree. I'm not making an excuse for him. I said right off the bat, This entire series hinges on, can you make perimeter shots or not? That's what this whole series boils down to. If Luka Doncic cannot make step back threes at a higher rate but much higher rate than he's been making in the playoffs to this point, they're going to lose this series. They're going to lose the series because Oklahoma City's really good. They're really balanced. They've got young, fresh legs. I don't see anybody on that side limited in any way physically. They've got guys to run it at him that'll do a good job on him defensively. But at the end of the day, his ultimate separation is the fact that he can get that shot off whenever he wants. And if he's making his share of those, now he gets you to bite on a head fake. He leans in and gets 3 free throws. He gets you to lean a little bit more. He crosses over, gets into the paint. It sets up everything for him, in addition to putting points on the board. So for me, if that's taken off the board, regardless what the reason is, if he's hurt or not, I'm not making an excuse. I'm saying it boils down to that. Yeah. And to me, there's no question that's why. This isn't the same player I watched all year. It's just not. He hasn't been the same. And in one very specific way, his inability to make jump shots. That's really what's different about him, because he can still score in the paint. He's still scoring in the post. He's getting to the rim enough. His passing still looks sharp. He's just not making jump shots. So whether it's the knee or a slump, they can't win this series if that doesn't change. Unless Kyrie Irving is able to do something like just extraordinary and start really carrying this offense as their like number one option almost for most of the game. I'm not sure.
I think that might be the adjustment, though. I honestly wonder if a little bit of this is sliding the scale in Kyrie's direction a little bit more. And let's get to the Thunder side of this to kind of open up why. One, I think Lou Dort is an unbelievable defender, and he's a rare example. Like when you go against Luka, even though he's not tall, he is so strong. You know, you have to have that size to combat Luka a little bit. So you got that part. And then their ability for such a young team, their ability to understand their assignments. How many times do you have a game plan that is leave this guy open, but when the ball swings, instinctually, a guy will run out at him or take a step? They have been so dialed in on who you run off the line and who you don't. All of their guys, even guys coming off the bench, and executing that, to me, is why that paint is so packed. So part of me wonders, okay, if Luka can't just muscle and power his way through, and if they're stacking the box even extra for him, I do wonder if that means, okay, Kyrie, you have the opportunity here then to be the lead guy and to collapse that defense to be able to create some other stuff. And if Luka doesn't have the step back, I wonder if putting the ball in Kyrie's hands to combat that is the move.
Well, I think that's got to be his approach, and I think that has to be Jason Kidd's approach. And here's the thing: that means a lot more than 14 shots. If that's the case, then you go look at the games when Kyrie really gets cooking. He's not shooting 14 shots. He might have to take 23, 25 shots if that's what it takes. If he feels right, the guy is an elite offensive player. He is absolutely capable of doing it, of having like 30 every night. If he's like the primary guy, Luka maybe drawing attention, get the ball out, get it to the other side, and now Kyrie attacks quickly before Oklahoma City has a chance to adjust to that. That might be the way to go. I still don't think they'd win the series. If Luka Doncic is like this far below his ceiling as a player, they can't win the series. And I'm concerned that he's not going to be able to get there based on the way he looks, based on the way he looked in game one, based on the fact they're talking about, probable for game two. Like and I don't know, look, a lot of that stuff's semantics. I get it. But I'm saying the fact that's even something that's coming up on the injury report, that here we are 48 hours later, doesn't sound like it's a lot better. And you've got these young, energetic legs coming at you, one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. Luka's even called him that. You add it all up. If you're not a lot better than you were in game one, regardless of what Kyrie Irving does, I just don't see how they win the series.
I was very impressed with Aaron Wiggins in this game. He had 16 points, made some big-time shots, made some big plays. Cason Wallace and Isaiah Joe, also incredible in this one. And then the Thunder their postseason has looked exactly like their regular season. If you're a Thunder fan, you have to be through the roof right now because, all the talk, including from myself, about the playoffs will be different, Nothing's been different for the Thunder so far. So far. Again, we'll see how it goes as they advance, but they have been relentless in starting fourth quarters with Jalen Williams at the helm. He only had 18 points. He did not shoot well, 6 of 15. but you wouldn't have known it from just watching that fourth quarter. The fourth quarter turns, the Mavericks are in desperation mode. I think they entered that down 9 or down 10, somewhere in there. So it's like, okay, the Mavericks need to make a run. Instead, immediately, Jalen Williams put that game away. Before you even have to get the clutch time, he put the game away as they always did in the regular season with a huge run. And to me, this Thunder team, I am now officially impressed with them. I had to wait to see it against a team of the Mavericks caliber. They executed a game plan. They did their offensive game plan the same they always do. The game looked exactly like it always does. And Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the big three, stepped up and played near perfect basketball by their standards, I thought. I'm very impressed with this Thunder team.
Totally agree. I was too. I've been impressed with them, but you're right. You wanted to see, like, this was the first time in the postseason where you go, okay, like, let's see. Everybody was waiting to see what that was going to look like in this matchup, whoever that was going to end up being, whether it was the Clippers or Dallas that advanced, that because they got through that first round so easily against New Orleans without Zion. Like, okay, now we're going to find out. Well, you found out they're a 1 seed for a reason. They were incredibly impressive. You know what's nuts is they had 29 assists on 40 field goals. It's an outrageous percentage, right? So they're moving the ball through the air. Shea talked about it after the game. Here's the thing, though. They only shot it on 40%, just over it, on 2-point shots. They were 45 on threes. I thought their 3-point shooting were just absolute lasers that they fired at Dallas, and particularly in that second half. Every single and they got that big run when they really put the game away. And they did a lot of that from the 3-point line. They also had 9 different guys in this game got an offensive rebound, and they had 16 total. That's hard to win when you give up 16 offensive rebounds. That many second chance opportunity, even though, because particularly tonight they shot 44%. Like, you did a pretty good job initially.
Right.
And then and they got 16 opportunities to have a second possession. That's just a killer. So obviously Dallas has to clean that up. Oklahoma City thoroughly outplayed them across the board. There's no other way to say it. And now you sit back and you wait and see what's the response going to be. You know, we've had a lot of series here. A team gets that first win in an impressive manner, and then we sit back and go, okay, let's see what happens in game 2. And, like, for instance, Minnesota showed you, well, no, we can be even better than that. And they were incredible in game 2. They were able to die it up. You know, Indiana loses the first game. They were great in game 2, but they just couldn't make the plays down the stretch, and now they're down 0-2. Let's see what Dallas has. You know, it's going to take your best punch. Oklahoma City, I do believe, is too good to think you're going to beat them 4 out of 5 times. So that's how important I think this game is for Dallas tonight. I think to win the series, I think you've got to get this split.
Yeah. The last thing I have on this, and we can be quick on it, I don't want to beat this point too hard, but we just talked about Minnesota, Denver game 2, one of the more physical playoff games. Knicks-Pacers, one of the more physical playoff games. This one, not at all. There was a lot of calls in this game, and you know, again, different officiating crew. We don't have to belabor it, but it is one of those things to note that it just seems like if you watch these games, every one has a drastically different level of physicality that's allowed. And this one, for whatever reason, felt more like a regular NBA regular season basketball game. A lot of really cheap driving calls for both teams in this one. And I think that's a note, at least.
It's wild that, we feel like we're watching a game, and every single game, you almost do feel like there's a completely different set of rules that are just going to apply to this game. The main things that you're really talking about is the amount of contact on ball handlers.
Yep, that's what it is.
That's really what it comes down to. That's what differentiates, to me, changes in officiating. Because plays at the rim, where guys get hit, for the most part, they're going to try to protect shooters. It might be a little bit more you got to play through, but for the most part, everybody's super aware of a shooter getting hit. So they're very cognizant of that. But that subjective part of it comes into how much you're going to allow on ball handlers. And to what extent does that affect their ability to change directions and get by you and to be able to, get from point A to point B and to set up what they're trying to do, and how much can you manipulate where you're sending them? That is a very subjective thing that is taking place from game to game. And you saw, I thought they just basically everything went out the window in the game 2 in the Minnesota-Denver series. And I think the referees got caught up in, wow, this team is so aggressive. Denver's not handling this well. They're playing very weak with the ball. They just let it be a feeding frenzy, and Minnesota took advantage of that. And I don't blame them for that. Every game, though, is different in that regard. And it's very important, obviously, for a team like Dallas with Luka and Kyrie, two guys that do an awful lot off the dribble. How much is going to be allowed? And you don't really know that until you start to watch the game being played.
And I would say, so on ball, like dribble drive attack, and then off ball screening, I think is the other area where it's really different. Sometimes some guys just have two arms around a guy trying to come off a screen and they're holding him, and it's just allowed. And then in other games, it's not. The reason I bring it up is the league, by its own admission, made stealth rule changes, not announced, but just kind of, hey, we want to allow this or that behind the scenes. And I'm all for it. I actually think these games are fun. Like, I thought Minnesota, Denver, I want the league to evolve into that direction. So this is not by any means a complaint. But when you make rule changes in stealth, everybody has to kind of like figure them out. Like, okay, well, what are the rules then? If you just came out and said, hey, here's what we're allowing, it would be different. But that was one of the things that we're kind of seeing right now, that the games are drastically different, and it's on the players now to know going in night to night that it's going to be different. And you just have to figure it out and adjust accordingly. Real quick, I just wanted to say a last note here. The Knicks, Wolves, and Thunder, to me, every year, Legs, a team gets the magic. They just get this thing where everything kind of comes together for them. The belief and all these other things. For me right now, the Knicks have it for sure. They have an insane belief. The Timberwolves have it. That looks like a team that believes they're the best. Nobody can be on the court with them. Haven't lost a game yet. And I think the Thunder have it. 5-0 in the playoffs. They have this connectedness. And the traits that I would identify as common between them, they have a leader that gives them belief. And let me give you this quote, by the way, from this one comes from DiVincenzo after the game about Brunson. He says, when he's out there, there's a level of calmness. We'll get the right shot every single time. There's a level of confidence from everybody that we have him on the court with us. Everybody can settle down and play their game. I think you could say that of Anthony Edwards. I think you could say that of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Those three teams have guys that make everyone else calm, and they have a calmness and maturity to them, a toughness, and a physicality. Those teams, look, the Celtics have been great. I'm not trying to exclude them from this. You could easily throw them in this list as well. But those three teams are new. We had questions about, are the playoffs going to explode this or that about them? Absolutely not. They've all stepped up in those categories, and they all kind of remind me of each other.
I completely agree with that. And I think specifically in talking about the Knicks, it's really amazing if you look at what they are doing with a rotation that short and playing the way that they play. What Josh Hart's doing right now just completely defies all logic of what human bounds, right, are. Seriously. Because he's not just out there for 48 minutes. He's playing harder than anybody else for 48 minutes, right? All the way through. Still has the energy to like go coast to coast in the 45th minute and get through traffic and guys bounce off of him and get to the rim. Come on. He's just not supposed to be able to do that. It's incredible what I'm watching out of them. And now we wait and see, is the rotation even shorter? Like, are you going to have to go, if you're Tom Thibodeau going forward because of this Anunoby situation, are you going to have to go with Alec Burks more? You got Shake Milton over there. Like, you can't play Josh Hart anymore than you already are. That's for sure. Brunson and DiVincenzo are going to be out there in the mid to upper 40s. You know, you already got Precious Achiuwa eating up some minutes for Mitchell Robinson. So it's really amazing on a short rotation what the Knicks are doing playing that style. It's incredible because foul trouble starts to kick in when the games are like this, right? It is. You're just going to – there's so much contact. Eventually, you're going to get guys with 4 or 5 fouls at bad spots. So they're doing this right now with 7 guys. Now we're down to 6 that are regular rotation players. I'm really curious to see what this looks like for the Knicks going forward. But they take the fight to the other team. I started saying this about the Knicks 3 months ago. It's amazing how good things happen when you just consistently play harder than the other team. And that's kind of their approach. I think that's Minnesota's approach. I think that's Oklahoma City's approach. So I think the 3 teams you mentioned, I agree with all of that.
It's funny. I thought during the regular season, the Knicks' advantage is they play harder than everyone, but in the playoffs, everyone plays hard. Turns out the Knicks have another gear of playing hard that they've been able to reach in these playoffs, and it's incredible to watch. They're fun, man. The Knicks are so fun. Lastly, Jokic won his 3rd MVP last night. Everybody kind of knew it was going to happen, but it finally happened. His team is down 0 games to 2, and he has had a real stinker, especially in game 2. I think he is now under some pressure. You win an MVP, and now you go into a must-win game on the road. I think there's a lot of pressure on him to perform, Legs. What did you make of him winning MVP? I don't know if you caught any of his speech or any of the stuff he said, but what did you think of him being named MVP?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't see that part because I was traveling. I wasn't able to see that part of it. I, nothing surprising. I think once, Joel Embiid was the front runner, got hurt, and it seemed like right away, it felt like it was like, okay, here we go. Let's open this thing up from this point forward. Let's see who's willing to go take it. And it seemed like Jokic took control of the momentum of that award pretty quickly. So wasn't surprised. I was curious to see how close the vote would be, and it actually wasn't as close as I thought it would be. With Shea and Luka, I thought both of those guys could be nipping on his heels, particularly Shea because they had the number 1 seed in the West. I thought Luka was going to be hurt by the fact that it's hard to justify it when you have 2 other really good candidates and there's that discrepancy in win total. That's hard to justify, I think, and that's why I thought Luka was going to come up short. He ultimately did. I thought the gap between Jokic and Shea was bigger than I thought. How about you?
I don't know. There was a little bit of momentum, and then Shea missed a couple games down the stretch, so there was a little bit of momentum there. I do think, and we've talked about this when we were talking about who deserves it, that there is more groupthink in today's NBA voting, probably because of that ESPN straw poll just naturally influences people. When you know before the vote happens what other people are thinking their vote will be, naturally that influences you. So I think that is probably happening here to make it a little more lopsided than it should be. The last point on this, though, and Legs, it sounds like you didn't see it, but I thought the presentation of it was a little underwhelming, to be honest with you. And then when Jokic was awarded, he does an interview with the TNT crew, and the very first words when they go to interview him, Shaquille O'Neal says, "Congratulations, Nikola. I don't think you should have won it. I think it should have been Shea." I sit there and go, Legs, we have 24 hours news cycles. We have talk shows all hours of the day. There's plenty of time to debate Jokic's validity in winning the award. The first thing when you hand him the award and say, "Congrats, here's the MVP. I don't think you should win it." What are we doing? I was so disappointed in Shaq in that moment.
I didn't see that. Actually, I'm sorry. I didn't see it last night, and I didn't read any about that this morning. It's the first time hearing about it. That is actually
First line.
That's incredibly disappointing. That's something that should never happen. It's the same reason I don't actually like people being allowed to boo draft picks on draft night in the building. I don't like that. It's the biggest night of the guy's life. It's the biggest night of his life. Whether you agree with your team pick or not, that night should not be subjected to that. That these players have worked their whole lives to get to that night. It's a night for them and their families to celebrate that. It's the culmination of a dream since they were a little kid, and we got people booing in the building where the draft pick takes place because they don't know who the player is, or it's not who they would have picked. It's insane to me. I've actually used this joke before on the air with Greeny. I said it's the equivalent of allowing hecklers in at a wedding. And like they sit in the back of the church, and here comes the bridal party, and they start chanting, "Yes, ugly bridesmaids." Ugly. It's like, no, we don't do that, right? So
ruining
it's
the moment.
Same thing here. Why would you set that up by denigrating the guy, man? It forced him to justify his selection. You know what I mean? I didn't know what his answer was.
That's how he asked him. He basically asked him, "I don't think you should be it. What do you think of that?" That's how you receive the award. That's like question number one, man. I was so upset.
They need to change that. If that's how they're going to do this, and look, this is all, everything now is created, made for TV. So we have to, rather than give out the awards before the postseason, we string them out throughout, and then this is how they're going to present them, and they're going to let that group do it. Well, then you should let Ernie Johnson be the guy that starts that, because he's not going to say that. Guarantee you, Ernie Johnson's not saying something like that. And so, and so who knows, man? Is some of that Shaq? He only won one. This is Jokic's third. I don't know, but you can't start an interview with a person being honored in that way with that kind of question, because that is absolutely denigrating. It's awkward, and you're forcing the player to justify his pick. None of it should be justification at that point. It's done. They voted. You don't have to prove why you won it or explain it. All you need to be doing is, obviously, you're going to be humbled. You're going to be thankful. You're going to talk about the other candidates. Hey, man, these guys are great. Any one of those guys could have won it. I'm honored to be able to do this. I know it puts me in incredible company historically, and I'm just so grateful for it. I trade this in to win another championship. I promise you. Like
all the same platitudes. Yep.
That's what they're all going to say the same thing, but give them a chance to do that rather than put them on the defensive where you've got to justify your selection. I'm sorry to hear that that's what happened because I did not know about that till you just said it.
Yeah, it was rough, man. It was rough. I hate that stuff. There's a moment for ceremony and celebration, and there's a moment for debate. Don't mix those two up. There's plenty of time for you to debate it if you want to, but not at the podium while a guy is receiving the award. All right, cue that outro music, Emma, and we have a super chat to get out on. Kevin Flores says, could you give me an interview for GM? Prefer Suns. All right, well, you paid your money. I'll read it. There you go.
Yeah.
And then Kevin Flores also says, I wish Benedict was healthy. I did too, man.
Yeah, so does Rick Carlisle, and so do we all, man. He was having a great year. It's very unfortunate. But listen, every team's dealing with it. Every team up and down the board is dealing with somebody being limited or out entirely. So it's just that time of year, and it seems like it's more prevalent than ever.
By the way, Julius Randle obviously out. Mitchell Robinson now out for their year. And now OG Anunoby possibly out. So the Knicks themselves are dropping like flies. Pacers have a chance to get into it, especially if OG misses some time. Guys, that does it. Tonight, we got more games in store, which means tomorrow's going to be another great show. We've got Cavs Celtics tonight, Mavericks Thunder Game 2. In both instances, should be a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.